What happens when country music royalty sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts? And the conversation takes a turn nobody saw coming. Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that had viewers at home picking sides and social media buzzing for weeks. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Asterisk. The View studio was filled with its usual energy as the cameras rolled for what everyone expected to be a routine celebrity interview. Reba McEntire, the queen of country music herself, had come on the show to promote her latest album and talk about her recent ventures. She sat poised in the guest chair, her signature red hair perfectly styled, wearing an elegant black blazer that commanded respect. Joy Behar, known for her sharp wit and never backing down from controversy, leaned forward with that familiar glint in her eye that regular viewers know means she's about to stir the pot. The other hosts, Swoopy Goldberg, Sarah N. Sonny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, looked on. Asterisk. So, Reba, Joy began with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You've been in the entertainment business for decades. You've seen how much the industry has changed. What do you think about all these young artists today who seem more focused on their social media followers than actual talent? Asterisk. Reba shifted slightly in her chair, her smile remaining diplomatic but her eyes sharpening just a touch. Well, Joy, I think every generation has its own way of connecting with audiences. These young artists are incredibly talented. They're just using different tools than we had back in my day. Asterisk. But don't you think? Joy pressed on, clearly not satisfied with the diplomatic answer, that social media has cheapened the art form. I mean, anyone with a phone can call themselves a musician now. Back in your era, you actually had to have real talent to make it. Asterisk. The temperature in the studio seemed to drop a few degrees. Whoopi glanced at Joy with a look that said, "Careful." Now, but Joy was already in full swing. Reba's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath the velvet. Joy, I have to respectfully disagree with you there. Talent is talent, regardless of the platform. Some of the most gifted artists I know started by posting videos online. The tools change, but the heart and soul of music, that never changes. Asterisk. Come on, Reba, Joy said with a dismissive wave of her hand. You can't seriously tell me that some kid lip-syncing on TikTok has the same artistic value as what you've built your career on. There's a difference between entertainment and art. Asterisk. Now the other hosts were looking uncomfortable. Sarah cleared her throat softly, trying to redirect, but Reba held up a gentle hand. Asterisk. Joy, I'm curious, Reba said, her southern accent becoming more pronounced, as it often did when she was getting worked up. Last I checked, you were a comedian before you became a talk show host. And comedy, like music, comes in all different forms. Asterisk. The audience let out a collective ooh, and you could see Joy's back stiffen. This wasn't going the way she expected. Well, I never claimed to be an authority, Joy shot back, but her voice had an edge now. I'm just saying there's a difference between paying your dues and getting handed success because you went viral. Asterisk. Paying your dues, Reba repeated. And now, her voice carried that unmistakable tone that anyone from Oklahoma would recognize as trouble brewing. Joy, honey, let me tell you about paying dues. I started singing in honky-tonk bars when I was 16 years old, getting paid $20 a night if I was lucky. I drove thousands of miles in a beat-up car, sleeping in truck stops, performing for crowds that sometimes numbered in the single digits. So when you talk about paying dues, I think I might know a thing or two about that. Asterisk's Joy wasn't backing down. I'm not questioning your dues, Reba. I'm talking about these new artists who get millions of followers overnight and suddenly think they're musicians. Asterisk. And I'm telling you, that's not how it works. Reba fired back, her composure cracking just slightly. You don't just wake up with millions of followers. Those kids you're talking about, they're working 18-hour days creating content, engaging with fans, writing songs, learning instruments, and yes, performing. Just because it looks easy to you doesn't mean it is. Asterisk Whoopi tried to jump in. Maybe. We should asterisk no Whoopi. Let me finish, Reba said firmly, her eyes never leaving Joy's face. I've been in this business for over 40 years, and I've learned that respect goes both ways. I respect every artist who puts their heart and soul into their work, whether they're performing at the Grand Ole Opry or in their bedroom for a phone camera. Asterisk Joy leaned back in her chair, clearly realizing she might have poked the wrong bear. But her pride wouldn't let her retreat. I'm just saying there's something to be said for the traditional path for working with record labels. For having professionals guide your career. Asterisk traditional path. Reba's laugh had no humor in it. Joy, the traditional path you're talking about nearly killed my career 3 times. Record executives who told me I was too country for pop and too pop for country. Producers who wanted to change everything about me, from my sound to my look to my name. The traditional path you're romanticizing is the same path that kept countless talented artists from ever being heard. Asterisk, the studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. These young artists you're dismissing, Reba continued, her voice growing stronger, they're doing something we never could. They're taking control of their own destiny. They're writing their own songs, producing their own music, building their own fan base. And doing it all without asking permission from some executive in a suit who's never held a guitar in his life. Asterisk Joy's face was flushed now. Quality control, Reba. Doesn't quality control matter anymore? Asterisk quality control. Reba stood up from her chair, something that never happens during a View interview. The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear into their seats. Joy, are you seriously suggesting that the music industry's quality control has been working? Because I can name about 100 terrible songs that got radio play simply because some executive thought they'd sell a T, and I can name 1,000 amazing songs that never saw the light of day because they didn't fit some formula. Asterisk, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Joy was clearly scrambling now, realizing this conversation had gotten away from her completely. I think, Joy said, trying to regain some composure, we might be talking about 2 different things here. Asterisk, no, Reba said firmly, still standing. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about respect. Respect for artists. Respect for hard work, and respect for the fact that real music comes from the heart, not from some predetermined path that you think everyone should follow. Rights for women's rights, for equality and justice. What have you done besides sing songs that make people feel good about their prejudices? Asterisk Gretchen's eyes narrowed. There it is. That's what you really think, isn't it? That anyone who doesn't see the world exactly like you must be a bigot. That working-class Americans who go to church and believe in traditional values are somehow less enlightened than you. You know what your problem is, Joy? You've spent so much time telling people what to think that you've forgotten how to listen. Asterisk 1. Of the other hosts stood up, trying to physically position herself between the 2 women. Ladies, please, we're all getting heated here. Let's take a commercial break and come back when everyone's had a chance to cool down. Asterisk, but Joy shook her head violently. No, I want an answer. Gretchen, do you or do you not support politicians who have actively worked to restrict voting rights, who have demonized immigrants, who have rolled back protections for vulnerable communities? Asterisk Gretchen took a deep breath. I support leaders who I believe will make this country stronger and more prosperous. I support policies that let people keep more of what they earn, that don't punish success, that respect individual freedom. If you disagree with that, fine. But stop acting like your opinion is moral authority and mine is moral failure. Asterisk Joy threw her hands up. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You hide behind platitudes while supporting people who cause real harm. You can't just say you support freedom and prosperity when the policies you're defending literally take those things away from people. Asterisk. Gretchen's voice finally rose to match Joy's volume. And you can't just scream that everyone who disagrees with you is causing harm. That's not an argument, Joy. That's a tantrum. I came here to talk about music, about connecting with an audience, about art. But apparently, that's not allowed unless I first pledge allegiance to your worldview. Asterisk. The other hosts were now standing too, trying desperately to regain control of the segment. The show's producer had given up on salvaging the interview and was signaling for a commercial break. But before the cameras could cut away, Joy Behar did something no one expected. She untied her microphone. You know what, Gretchen? You're right. About one thing. I've been doing this for a long time. Too long, maybe, because I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending that all opinions are equally valid. I'm tired of giving airtime to people who use their platforms to divide rather than unite. And I'm especially tired of being told that I'm intolerant, because I won't tolerate intolerance. Asterisk. She placed the microphone on the table with a decisive thud. I've spent years on this show trying to have meaningful conversations, trying to bridge divides, trying to make people think. But if this is what it's come to, if we're at a place where we can't even agree on basic reality, then maybe it's time for me to step aside and let someone else try. Asterisk. The studio fell into stunned silence. Gretchen stood frozen for a moment, watching. Joy's hands trembled slightly as they released the microphone. The other hosts were paralyzed, unsure whether this was a dramatic gesture or something more permanent. The audience barely breathed. Every person leaning forward in their seats, trying to process what they were witnessing. Joy, one of the co-hosts finally said, her voice shaking. Joy, come on, let's just take a break. We can talk about this, asterisk, but... Joy shook her head slowly, her eyes still locked on Gretchen. No, I mean it. I'm done. I've said what I needed to say, and clearly I'm not the right person for this anymore. Not if this is what we're doing now. Gretchen's expression shifted from defiance to something more complex. Confusion mixed with what might have been concern. Joy, I didn't come here to make you quit your job. I came here to have a conversation. Asterisk. Joy let out a bitter laugh. A conversation. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it felt more like a confrontation, and maybe that's on me. Maybe I've lost the ability to have these conversations without getting angry. But I'm not going to apologize for caring about things that matter. Asterisk. Gretchen took a step closer to the table. I'm not asking you to apologize for caring. I'm asking you to understand that other people care too, just about different things. That doesn't make them your enemy. Asterisk. Joy's voice cracked slightly. But when the things you care about actively harm the things I care about, Gretchen, what am I supposed to do? Just smile and nod. Just agree to disagree while people suffer the consequences of bad policy and dangerous rhetoric. I can't do that anymore. Asterisk. One host attempted to intervene. Joy, you're one of the most important voices on this show, on television. We need you here. Please, just sit down. Let's breathe for a minute. Joy turned to face her colleague, and for the first time, her eyes were glistening with tears. She was fighting to hold back. Sarah, I appreciate that. I really do. Look at me. I'm shaking. I'm so angry I can barely think straight. This isn't who I want to be. This isn't the kind of conversation I want to have. And if I can't have the conversations I believe in without losing myself like this, then what's the point? Asterisk. Gretchen spoke again, her voice softer now, but still firm. You talk about harm, Joy. You talk about consequences. But do you know what harms people? Being dismissed. being told that their values don't matter, that their way of life is backwards or ignorant. I've watched people in small towns all across this country get talked down to by people who've never spent a day in their shoes. That does damage, real damage. Joy wiped at her eyes quickly, refusing to let herself fully cry. And I've watched people lose their rights. I've watched families torn apart. I've watched hatred get emboldened because people in power gave it permission. So, forgive me if I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who feel dismissed when they're supporting the very systems that cause that pain. Gretchen's frustration returned to her voice. You keep saying that. You keep acting like everyone who doesn't vote the way you vote, who doesn't think the way you think, is supporting hatred. Do you realize how insulting that is? Do you understand? That you're talking about millions of people who love their families, who help their neighbors, who go to work and pay their taxes and try to make their communities better. Joy turned back to face her directly. And do you understand that good intentions don't absolve people of responsibility? That you can be a kind person in your personal life and still support systems that cause harm. That's what you're not getting, Gretchen. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying that the political alignment you're defending has real-world consequences that hurt real people. Gretchen threw her hands up. Everything has consequences. Joy. Every policy, every decision, every vote. The question is, who gets to decide which consequences matter more? You've decided that your priorities are the right ones, the moral ones, and anyone who has different priorities is wrong. That's not democracy. That's authoritarianism, dressed up in progressive language. Joy's face went pale, then flushed red. Authoritarianism. You're calling me authoritarian? I'm fighting for people's freedom, Gretchen. I'm fighting for equality and justice and basic human dignity. Gretchen didn't back down. And I'm fighting for people to be able to live their lives without being told they're terrible people if they don't agree with every item on someone else's agenda. I'm fighting for the idea that a person can be religious without being a bigot, can support law enforcement without hating minorities, can want secure borders without being racist. But apparently, that's too much nuance for this conversation. Joy's voice rose again. Nuance? You want to talk about nuance. Where's the nuance when your side is banning books, attacking teachers, stripping away reproductive rights? Where's the nuance when people are being denied health care, when kids are going hungry, when the planet is burning? Don't lecture me about nuance when the policies you're defending are destroying lives. Gretchen stepped even closer now, her voice matching Joy's intensity. My side. See, that's the problem right there. You've divided this entire country into sides, into us versus them. And anyone on the other side from you is automatically wrong, automatically harmful, automatically the enemy. You know what that leads to, Joy? It leads to exactly the kind of hatred you claim to be fighting against. One of the producers had made it down from the booth and was now standing just off camera, making frantic gestures. But neither woman was paying attention to anything except each other. The other hosts had essentially given up trying to moderate and were simply watching, horrified and fascinated in equal measure. Joy's hands were clenched into fists at her sides. I have spent my entire career building bridges, Gretchen. I have had thousands of conversations with people I disagree with. I have listened. I have tried to understand. I have extended empathy and grace even when it wasn't returned. But there comes a point where you have to draw a line. There comes a point where you have to say, enough is enough. And I've reached that point. Gretchen's eyes flashed. So, you're drawing the line at me? At people like me, working-class Americans who didn't go to fancy schools, who don't have connections in media or entertainment, who just want to live their lives and raise their work. Kids, and be left alone. That's where you draw your line. Joy shook her head violently. I'm drawing the line at the refusal to acknowledge reality. I'm drawing the line at the celebration of willful ignorance. I'm drawing the line at the normalization of cruelty. And, yes, if you're part of that, if you're contributing to it, then yes, that's where I draw my line. Gretchen's laugh was sharp and humorless. Willful ignorance. That's rich. You sit here in New York City surrounded by people who all think exactly like you, and you call other people ignorant. You've never had to struggle the way real Americans struggle. You've never had to choose between paying your electric bill and buying groceries. You've never had to work 3 jobs just to keep a roof over your head. But sure, tell me more about reality. Joy's voice went quiet, which was somehow more frightening than when she'd been yelling. You don't know anything about my life, Gretchen. You don't know where I came from or what I've been through. And you're making the exact same assumptions about me that you're accusing me of making about you. Gretchen nodded slowly. You're right. I don't know your life, but you don't know mine either. You don't know the lives of the people who come to my shows, who buy my records, who relate to my music because it speaks to their experience. And yet, you feel perfectly comfortable judging all of us, dismissing all of us as if our perspective has no value. Joy picked up her microphone again, but didn't put it back on. Instead, she held it in her hand, staring at it as if it were a foreign object. You know what the saddest part of this is, Gretchen? I actually agree with some of what you're saying.